research. And you know I love research, so with all that said, let's just get right into the video. Okay, before we really get started, I wanted to light a candle to kind of set the scene almost. I actually had it lit before the video, and then I decided I wanted to relight it for the video because I love candle sounds. And it's kind of apropos that we have this candle because it is the love candle, and this is from Bath and Body Works. So. Almost all my candles are from Bath and Body Works. As you can see, it was already lit. So we'll set this down and get some little flame, then we can light the candle. So here is the candle, and we'll just set that over there, over here. And now our mood is kind of set. We're feeling good. So let's just get started. So the first drag queen that I am starting with today is Danny LaRue. This is a picture of them right here. But Danny LaRue was born July 26th, 1927, and passed away May 31st, 2009. Danny LaRue was born in Ireland, but they really became popular in the UK, in England. And their main, how they got kind of famous was they were known for their celebrity impersonation. Some of their most famous ones were Elizabeth Taylor, Judy Garland, and Marlene Dietrich. And because they were so revered in terms of their impersonation in the 1960s, they were one of Britain's highest paid entertainers, which is crazy for someone who was a queer performer being so highly revered. And they were also a stage actor. They gained a lot of popularity for their work in musicals and plays on stage. They were often called the Grand Dame of Drag because they kind of paved the way for a lot of drag queens to be successful in the entertainment business. In 2002, Danny LaRue was awarded an Ubi, or Order of the British Empire, which is I don't know how to describe it. It's like a special award for people who have made great strides in the arts and performance. And I believe Danny LaRue said that it was one of the most special things they've ever been awarded. And in 1969, 1972, and 1978, they were a part of the Royal Variety Performance. You might know certain performances from the Royal Variety Performance, including the Beatles' very famous performance of Twist and Shout. personal favorite, and I may be a little bit biased, but this next queen is Flawless Sabrina. Flawless Sabrina. Now, have you seen the documentary The Queen? Sabrina was the MC of the pageant. They were born September 10th, 1939, and passed away November 18th, 2017, which is a day before my birthday. But Flawless Sabrina was one of the first widely known queens in the U.S. Now, Danny LaRue was from the UK and Ireland, but in the U.S., Flawless Sabrina was a very important shaping figure, mainly because of her work in pageants and work with pageant queens. One of the shows that she hosted were the Nationals, which was a very important drag competition for queens all over the U.S. But what she, I believe, is most known for is the Miss All-American Camp Beauty Contest, which is from the movie, the documentary, The Queen, which came out in 1967. Now, if you haven't seen The Queen, it is a documentary documenting the specific pageant that I just mentioned, and the winner, the participants, and it has a lot to do about what the queens talk about before the pageant and after the pageant, and just their experiences. It's a very great watch if you haven't seen it. But The Queen was scheduled to be showed at the Cannes Film Festival, which, as you probably know, is a very important festival. And the problem is that there was a lot of problems between France and another, I can't remember what exactly it was. I probably could have done research on more of this, but the festival was canceled that year in 1967, only part of it. Out of the scheduled films, I believe there was maybe above 25, only 11 were shown, and there was never a winner chosen. But their movie was not shown, which caused Sabrina to do very public displays of promotion in the middle of Times Square, and was arrested several times for promoting the movie for people to go see it. But Sabrina has earned the title by a lot of queens in the area at the time, the title of Mother Flawless Sabrina, or Mother Sabrina, because of her work helping younger queens, or even helping older queens, but just being a mother figure in terms of drag. But other than that, Sabrina is quite a mysterious figure, because she wasn't necessarily in the news a lot of the time. She would help the queens on her own, and she wouldn't necessarily broadcast her personal life ever. She just wanted to help drag become a more acceptable art, or just a thing that people loved to do. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about is the Flawless Sabrina Archives. The Flawless Sabrina Archives. Now, when Sabrina passed away, there was a group of people who wanted to preserve Sabrina's legacy, her legacy. So they created the Flawless Sabrina Archives, in which they took furniture from her apartment, documents of her help towards trans youth, as well as drag queens, and they put it all in an archive so that the work that Sabrina did to help people in the LGBT plus community could be preserved, which I think is very exciting and important, because it's always important to know where the roots and heritage Crystal LaBeija is a very important figure in informing drag culture as we know it today. Now, her birth and death dates are not well documented, but we know she was born sometime in the 1930s and passed away in the mid-1990s. And she is most well known for her now legendary House of LaBeija and the creation of ball and ballroom culture within the drag community. Now, Crystal LaBeija had won the 1967 Miss Manhattan pageant and went on to compete in the Miss All-American Camp Drag Contest. It's such a convoluted title. Camp Beauty Contest, there we go. And when she lost, she had attributed a lot to her losing to racism on the part of the judges, and she wanted to create a space where she wouldn't have to feel like her skin color or her race was discriminated against, which is just, I love her. She's great, she's amazing, and she did so much for the African American queer community. And also during this time, Black and African American drag queens were like almost encouraged to pale their complexion so that they had a higher chance of winning contests. And Crystal was not a fan of that because she was very proud of her race. So with that, she and another member of the House of LaBeija, Lottie LaBeija, created their own space where they could feel comfortable in their race and invite more African American drag queens and trans people who felt uncomfortable in other spaces to just come and be themselves, which is very important. And in this, they created ball and ballroom culture. Now, in today's drag scene, houses are typically associated with ballroom culture, and ballroom culture has a lot to do with the formative years of African American queer and drag culture. And it has a lot to do with the type of dance, the music, the celebration, and the just general celebration. And in 1972, they had the first use of the word ball when Lottie and Crystal created like a special contest, and it was very, very important with the first use of the word ball, and that sparked so much more use of that word. Also, the now famous drag queen RuPaul credited her first viewing of drag culture as going to see a show with Crystal LaBeija, and that's where RuPaul fell in love with drag. And yeah, but that's just a little fun fact. But Crystal was also an extremely important activist for African American trans youth and homeless African American queer people. She was constantly wanting to help people because she knew that being a part of the queer community was not easy, and she wanted to make sure everybody had the opportunity to succeed and live their life as best they could. And she was also called a drag mother, often like Sabrina, but her motherly love was a lot to do with lifting up people in her community and using that to influence others around her to do the same as she was doing. And I have so much respect for Crystal LaBeija because she was in a time where African Americans were so discriminated against. They still are, of course, but she was in a time where Black, queer, and trans youth were living the worst lives, and she used her influence to build them up, and I respect her so much for that. So that is Crystal LaBeija. We have Rachel Harlow while we're on the topic of the Miss All-American Camp Beauty Contest, because Rachel Harlow won the she was very, very feminine, and she, as soon as she started doing drag, she started winning competitions like that because she was very beautiful. She picked up makeup very, very quickly, and ultimately led her to win the 1967 pageant. And she started out doing drag, of course, but she later realized that inside she was a woman. She was a woman, and in 1972, she completed gender affirmation surgery, is what it's called now. But in all the articles at the time, it was called gender correction surgery. Now that term is very, like, it's not a good term. So gender affirmation surgery is what is, I believe it's called now. And she lived, from that point on, she lived the rest of her life as a woman. And the main documents you can find about her now are about her transition, because it was very, that was the stuff that was documented, because it was big strides made for the queer community, because even though gender affirmation surgery had existed before this time, she was a drag queen who had realized she was a woman, and that was kind of a big moment for other queens who had felt that way, and Rachel transitioning was kind of a beacon of hope for a lot of them. Yeah, and she was a very big influence in terms of drag makeup and the kind of drag that was done then. So that is Rachel Harlow. Now, this person is from the 1970s mostly, and they're only partly a drag queen, I would say. But that is Sylvester. Now, Sylvester was a musician in the 1970s and 80s. They were born September 6th, 1947, and passed away December 16th, 1988. But yes, very, very important musician. In the 1960s, Sylvester was discouraged from going to the church because of their disapproval of them being gay and queer. So Sylvester left the church and joined a group of other African American queer trans drag queen group called the Disco Days, I believe what it is. You can see what I wrote there, but yeah, and that kind of helped Sylvester create more of their personal style and write music. But later, in the late 1960s, they joined a group that I don't know if I can say the name on YouTube, but if you look up Sylvester, you'll often see this term, and you'll probably understand why I can't say it on YouTube. But this group was a group of hippies and drag queens who were just very passionate about peace and creation of all kinds. Creativity was very, very important to them, and Sylvester was a leading member in this group, and it was another situation that kind of grew Sylvester's personal style, personal music, and their personality as well. And Sylvester is often called the Queen of Disco, which is so amazing. If you know the song Mighty Real, that one's my favorite. But yes, Queen of Disco, their music is so fun if you ever listen to it. And something that was very important about Sylvester's activism, they were very much an activist, but what was very important about their activism is that they were openly the way they were viewed in the public eye. But Sylvester used their influence to show people that having HIV or having AIDS was not something that people needed to be scared of, and that there were things that they could do to make sure they were safe and that they were making good decisions as to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS, so less people would have to suffer from the effects. Or it was a lot about education, educating people about why it is important to be educated, and you understand what I'm trying to say. So that was very, very important activism. And also Sylvester was another activist for helping African American youth, African American queer youth specifically. And I love Sylvester so much as they are only kind of a drag queen, mostly musician and activist, I just wanted to put them on this list because I love them so very much. So that is Sylvester. Now, a drag queen that I do not have on this list today is Marsha B. Johnson. And if you are part of the LGBTQ plus community, you probably know who Marsha B. Johnson is. But the reason I didn't include her in this video today, is because this week